Tava kathamritam tapta jivanam kavibhiriritam kalmashapaham Sravanamangalam Srimadatam Bhuvi Grananti Ye Bhurida Jana. So in the last class, we were studying the section where Sri Ramakrishna is discussing about the concept of the Shakti. The Shakti alone is the root of the universe. That primal energy has two aspects, Vidya and Avidya. Avidya deludes, Avidya conjures up woman and gold, which casts the spell. Vidya begets devotion, kindness, wisdom, and love, which lead one to God. So that's the thing which we were discussing in the last class, that the biological evolution starts with ignorance and ends with wisdom. So at the beginning, because of the wrong association of the Atman with the body-mind complex, we find that all the evolution which speaks of selfishness, that everything is centered around the ego, and that speaks of the woman and gold. For our sustenance, we need gold, and for our transmission of our genes, the lust and gold. So that's the idea of avidya. Why that happens? Because we want to continue as a physical being, as we have wrongly identified ourselves with the psychophysical existence. And from that endeavor to continue as a psychophysical being, that leads to that ignorance, which conjures up woman and gold, that casts the spell on us. And when we realize that we are already perfect, it's not that we have to gain perfection. It's not that we have to gain eternity. We are already that. We somehow forgot about it. We forgot about our real nature. In the Sanskrit, they speak of Chamikar Nyaya. Chamikar means the necklace. The lady is wearing the necklace, and suddenly she feels the necklace is lost. She is running hither and thither, shouting that, where is my necklace? And suddenly someone points out, wow, what a nice person you are. It's all the way. It's always hanging around your neck. It's there always in your neck. And then she finds that it was somehow got covered with the cloth she was wearing, the sari she was wearing. So it was not visible. And she thought it was lost. And then she saw it was already there. So this is the forgetfulness. It is not something that we have really lost. We somehow forgot about it. And when we realize that we are that, then our endeavor to continue in the psychophysical existence by wrongly identifying ourselves with that endeavor stops. And that's what begets devotion, kindness, wisdom, love. All those qualities speaks of selflessness. That avidya speaks of selfishness and vidya speaks of selflessness. Because this idea of this limited self, the moment it falls off, it finds expression as kindness, as love, as devotion, as wisdom, where the one who is the object of my love, his importance is, or her importance is so much that I start forgetting about myself. So all short of love, the real love speaks of selflessness. What we define as love, the word love has been polluted by the word. The word love is, which we mean is, it is just self-seeking. that by loving others, it gives me a good sensation, good feeling. That's why I love. It speaks of selfishness. As in Chaitanya Charitamrita, very nicely it has been defined that what is prema and what is kama. Atma rati kama, Krishna rati prema. When all your love is directed towards the Lord, you are not in any way bothered about your own pleasures, about your own material gains, about your own security. You go beyond the comfort zone, beyond the security zone. If the need be that for your love for the divine, you have to come out of that. You are in no way bothered about it. So yeah, that love, just the way when the child is in danger, the mother doesn't think of her own comfort zone, of her own security zone. What to speak of danger? Throughout the day, 24/7, the child's interest becomes the mother's interest. In the present day world, it is changing. Yes, even in the mother's love, we find self-seeking. There are so many cases where we find that some of the books, and it's beyond our comprehension. Someone gave me a book, just how to rear up the child. And the very second chapter or third chapter comes the problem when the moment they have the child, there's a staggering case of divorce after that they cannot take up the pressure. That when the child comes, the self-seeking has gone to such an extent that we have become even worse than the animals. Even in the animal kingdom, we find that the mother is ready to give the life for the child. But we, that as a human civilization, has got to such an extent, the self-seeking has got to such an extent that we have even become worse than the animals. That even for the sake of the child, we find that there's so many family breakages are happening. So that's not the thing which we are speaking as love. The real love speaks of selflessness, where you don't think of yourself, that your freedom is not freedom of the senses. As Swami Ramakrishna used to say again and again, freedom means freedom from the senses. Freedom doesn't mean freedom of the senses. So this too speaks of the avidya and the vidya, which Sri Ramakrishna was speaking of. The Shakti finds expression. First, it may find expression as avidya, but within the creation, it is being programmed that though for the time being, we may be just being devoured by the ignorance as if, but there is a way out. We can come out of it. It has been programmed in such a way. As in the last class, we are giving the example that the computer games, when you are playing the computer game for the first time, that as you go on playing higher and higher stages, the game may become very difficult. You may lose again and again, and you may have an idea that there is no way out as if. But suddenly you find as you develop the skills, there is a way out, and then you win the game. What's the idea? That the game has been programmed in such a way that though it is very difficult to win, but you can win. It is not impossible. They could have programmed in such a way that there is no way out. However you may try, you may lose. Yes, but the programmer will never do that. Why? Because they know the joy of the game is, after much difficulty, to overcome all the hurdles. And that's how, as if Shakti alone, the primal energy, is playing with his creation. He has created this world, which is the world just like the computer's virtual reality, where we are all as if playing. We are a part of the matrix, and there is a way out. And when we find that these qualities are finding expression through our life, the devotion, kindness, wisdom, love, know it for certain, we are on the way to liberation, where Vidya Shakti, not the Avidya, the Vidya Shakti has taken hold of us. This Avidya must be propitiated. And that is the purpose of the rites of Shakti worship. In this worship, a woman is regarded as the representation of the Divine Mother. So even in the last class, we gave an indication here. So this is a unique aspect of the Vedantic sadhana. I won't say this, Vedanta also. In Vedanta, we find renunciation is given more importance. In the later period, from Vedanta, the Tantra developed, where spiritual life doesn't entail that you have to renounce everything. Even while staying in the world, you can gradually develop detachment by changing your orientation. So after all the attachment is not in the physical level, it is in the mind. So if I can change the orientation of the mind, I can get rid of the attachment. So why that woman is regarded as the representation of the Divine Mother? From the subjective point of view, we find that we, by default, we have been created in such a way that the opposite sex will attract each other. It's obvious, it's very natural, because the purpose of creation behind that is that it should be there. By default, it is there. What's the way out? That if we have to go beyond the impulses to really develop a sense of detachment, one thing is run away from the circumstances. The other is try to change the orientation. Just see that what's the most pure relationship we find of all the human relationships is that of the child and the mother. It's a very pure relation. So it is pure love, where there is no tinge of lust there. It is a pure love. So why not see the representation of the Divine Mother in all these representations of Shakti, all women? So that can lead to a spiritual evolution even when we are staying in the world, because your orientation has changed. So that's the idea behind all the Tantra worship, that see the mother in each and every form of the woman. The avidya must be propitiated, and that is the purpose of the rites of Shakti worship. In this worship, a woman is regarded as a representation of the Divine Mother. So by changing the orientation, what we are doing, we are designing a new neural pathway, which enables us to come out of the groove of the default mode. So you're creating a new, they say that in our present neurology, they say the neurons that fires together, wires together. So that's the way that's the basic idea behind neuroplasticity. That if you can associate an idea with your perception, in time, they will wire up. That whenever I see a woman, I try to see the Divine Mother in her. So this is what is happening, that with that perception, your new idea, this is getting wired gradually as you're trying to fire the neurons. It, to a certain extent, it is within our control that I am trying to constantly try to see the Divine Mother in each and every woman. So the perception gets wired up with your conception. And in time, your total orientation of the mind changes. So that's the idea behind the Shakti worship. The devotee assumes various attitudes towards Shakti in order to propitiate her. The attitude of a handmaid, a hero, or a child. So what are the three attitudes which the scripture speaks of? The attitude of a handmaid, Sakhi Bhava, means you are the handmaid of the Divine Mother. So that way what happens, that even if you are a male, you are thinking yourself as the female, the handmaid. So that way you go beyond the concept of gender. And not only that, just as in the Bhakti Shastra, we find that as Sakha, when you try to relate as friend to the divine, your fear factor falls off. Where there is fear, there cannot be love. In real love, there cannot be fear. So the handmaid is almost similar to that. As you are the Sakhi, the friend of the mother, but you are also of feminine, she is also feminine. Then the fear factor is not there, and you transcend the idea of the gender, So that's one of the attitude. Child, we of course understand. We think of the woman as the mother and I am the child. The hero. Hero is the attitude of the husband towards the wife. This is also one of the spiritual practices, one of the path in the spiritual practices. You may say, how? Why? Very interesting that here also we find it is the concept of sublimation. That all cannot think of renunciation. The majority will have to, that we are being built in such a way, we have to go through the so-called family life. Now, when you're entering into the marriage, if the groom thinks the bride as a representation of the Shakti, not only that, it's not only that the groom has to think the bride is the representation of the Shakti, even the bride thinks the groom is a Shiva. So what happens? You are sublimating that relation. That relationship is there, but the respect factor comes. You're trying to see the divine in the other person. So the relation gets sanctified, it gets sublimated. In Tantra Shastra, all the sadhanas, the idea of sublimation comes from the concept called Atmavat Deva Sevanam. Atmavat Deva Sevanam. What is that? That whatever you like, whatever are your inclination, instead of going outright to enjoy that, offer it to the divine. First, offer it to the divine, and then you have it as a consecrated prasadam, is a consecrated offering. Then what happens? You are still enjoying the thing, but somehow the devotional factor has started entering into it. To give an example, that when the summer season comes, it's the time for the mangoes to come, and the first mangoes you find in the market. You go for shopping and you buy the mangoes, and just immediately I can have it. There is no harm in it. But what a devotee will do, he will bring. He also likes the mango. That's why he bought it. But first he will offer it to the divine and then have it as the consecrated food. What happens? He's still enjoying the thing he likes, but the devotional factors enter into it. That it has been offered to the divine, it is consecrated. This is the idea called Atmavat Deva Sevanam. Whatever you like, with that, all those things, you do the seva to the divine. You will find if you go to all these old temples, if you go to Jagannath temple, from the morning till evening, you will find that Jagannath Mahaprabhu is being served the way any other human being is served. In the morning, they will give the neem, in the olden days, the stem of the neem plant was used for brushing the teeth. They used to use that. So you will find that they have given this, the stem of the neem. They will offer water and other things for washing his face, for ablutions. There is time for taking shower. Everything, just like the food is offered, elaborate food is offered. That again comes as prasadam. What's the idea? Atmavat Deva Sevanam. Many may say that those who see it superfluously, they say, is God really a person of flesh and bones that you're treating him that way? The idea is not that. God is beyond that, beyond all those things. But as a human being, I find that one of the very wonderful way, nice way to sublimate my emotions, that I, instead of forcefully trying to get rid of it, I take the help of it in such a way that instead of binding me, it gradually helps me to grow devotion. So instead of subjugation, you are sublimating them by bringing the devotional factor into it. So the same thing happens here, that most of the people have a natural inclination for family life. Okay, enter into it. When you're in, that's why we have the Griha Pravesh. You have built your house, straight, without, instead of entering into it straight, they are entering into the house and start living. First, you have a housewarming ceremony. What's meant for that? What's the actual idea behind it? The same thing. It's not my house. It's the house of the divine. I offer this house to him, and I just stay there as the caretaker. But the house is the house of the divine. So yeah, it's the same thing you are still doing. You're staying in the house, you're living with the family. The wife is a representation of the Shakti. The wife also thinks my husband is a representation of the Shiva. Similar life is going on. But because of that type of attitude, we find that there is the mutual respect. Without respect, there cannot be love. This respect has to be there in real love. That mutual respect, by seeing the inner core of each and every being. That if God has become the entire creation, he is there in the wife, he is there in the husband. Why not see the Lord in the wife, in the husband? So that's the idea behind the hero worship. That if I think that the divine has taken the form of the Shakti, of my wife, then you will find it is helping you in your spiritual life. What's the basic idea behind it? That it is not something, it's not a license, that religious, all these prescriptions doesn't give you license to enjoy the sensuous pleasures of world. It's not license for transgression. It's reaching out to those who are extremely attached and raise them up in devotion. If I say that in spiritual life nothing can happen without renunciation, at last I will find that the spiritual world is beyond the scope for the majority of the humankind. They have nothing to do with spirituality. They remain totally out of it. To allow the spirituality to permeate the entire human civilization, it has to have some avenues by which everyone can relate to the spiritual life. So it is, if you find that you have developed sufficient detachment, renunciation, of course there is no need to have that attitude of the hero. You can go with the attitude of a child, or just you can have a detachment and be absorbed in samadhi. You need not enter into the family life at all. But those who have attachment, is there no way out for them? Will you say that for them there is no scope for any spiritual practice? So that spiritual practice is really effective, which can prescribe for all. There should be some prescription for all. It's not just for the mere few. So it speaks a lot. When you have a system where there is no scope for everyone to develop, you find a huge percentage of the population is frustrated. And that leads to all those criminal activities. When a person finds that he has been left out, as if boycotted by the society, thinking he's of or she's of no use, that makes them desperate. They can go for anything. So that's why we spoke that in Tantra we find that many will be criticizing this sacrifice of animals in front of the deity. Again, it's not a license for sunset enjoyment. If you have developed sufficient detachment, you need not go for that. It's not that all have to just offer the animal as sacrifice in front of the deity and have it as the consecrated food. It's not for all. There are a few who are these meat eaters. They cannot think their life without resorting to this eating meat or this non-veg food. Their nature is tamasic. Then is spirituality not for them? You will find Tantra. Tantra in a way has pervaded all the sections of the society by coming down to that person, by saying, well, if you want to really have meat, you can do it. How? Offer it to the divine. And then you may say, bah, it's a nice thing. You will see that actually the offering of animals in front of the divine doesn't speak of license, it speaks of restriction. In our scriptures, they say only on particular days. It's not that every day you can offer animal as sacrifice to the deity. It's only on particular auspicious days that sacrifice can happen. And then only particular specific animals can be sacrificed, not all. You will find in the present day, the entire flora fauna has been disturbed by human beings' greed, resorting, they are going to have the meat of each and everything. They leave out nothing. It's the cause of our these viral infections. That's one part of it. And apart from that, it is totally demolishing the ecological balance. I was in the Northeast India. In Cherrapunji, I saw that how that total, what you say, that if there is no restriction in what you eat, how means extensively the ecological balance is disturbed. If you go to Cherrapunji, you won't see a single bird, because Cherrapunji has the highest rainfall in the world, but it is a terrain, mountainous terrain. So because of the heavy rainfall, what happens, as it is a slope, all the soil gets eroded. It is washed away. So it is extremely unfertile land. Just see the paradox, the highest rainfall, the land is not fertile because the soil is washed away. It's a slopy terrain. And as there is not sufficient vegetation, naturally the population there resorts to meat eating. They try to get whatever they find. In any bird, if they find, they will just, with a bow and arrow or somehow they will shoot it, and just anything, they get some log or some dry leaves, they will burn, they will roast it and eat it. As a result, there is not a single bird also in that place. So now you will find that the restriction comes here. In the Vedic sacrifices, even in Tantra, it is mentioned, specifically mentioned, what are the animals you can offer. Not everything you can offer. And not every day, particular day. And you cannot have meat without offering it to the divine. You have to offer. When the British came to India, very interesting. Even now you will find, if you go to a Hindu meats the selling shop. So now when the British came, this meat shop was everywhere. Previously, it was only in the temple after offering, they used to have meat. Now, when the British came, naturally, the total culture, there was a total this transformation of the social structure. Meat shop was everywhere. But after opening the meat shop, they found that the shopkeepers found the people still tend to have meat only when it is offered to the goddess. So even now you will find, if you go to any meat selling shop, still what they do, as it is now not an offered thing, what they do, at least they will keep a picture of the goddess, the divine, in the meat shop, to have an idea that yes, that there is a photo, and we as if offer it to we sacrifice in front of that deity, and then the people somehow feel like buying. So what's the idea? There was, in those days, before the invasions, this idea was quite prevalent in the society, that all didn't take meat. The Brahmins, they were sattvic nature. It's only those who are hardworking, the labor class, they naturally resort to taking meat. But for them also, this restriction was there, that after offering, only on specific days you can have meat. It's a restriction. How it's a restriction? In the modern society, it is not visible. Why all these sacrifices are so much criticized? Because it was done in open, in front of the deity, all can see. Now go to the slaughterhouse. The way the animals are killed, the treated every day, millions. And then you will find that instead of saying that you cannot kill animals at all, they gave, yes, okay. As you have a tendency, if you force a people, force this population to abstinence, know it for certain, hidingly they will do it. When you try to stop this drug addiction, the drug trafficking starts. You cannot force. It will happen illegal way. So you have to find a way out by which you can gradually sublimate all those tendencies. And the Tantra was a wonderful way of that all the human impulses were okay. That's why they have this three bhava, Pashu bhava, Manav bhava, Deva bhava. That if anyone has a Pashu bhava, you need not say that religion is not for you. Still it is there. But at the same time, Deva bhava person, the person who is already established in this detachment, he need not have to come down to this level. Well, he can practice his spirituality without resorting to all these practices. It was not something compulsory for all. It was for those who are yet to develop those detachment. How it can be developed? Gradually by associating your impulses with some sublime ideas. And then you will find the devotion is growing. And as the devotion grows, the other impulses gradually starts sublimating. It starts getting attenuated. Its effect is not as intense as it used to be. And that's how gradually you develop this detachment. So now you will understand that these practices were very, very scientific. It has to do with our psychology. Even if you go to the rehabilitation camp where the drug addicts are, not the very first, it is not on the very first day they ask them to abstain from drugs. No. Because they know that there will be a withdrawal effect. You cannot stop it immediately. They also are given the drugs. They slowly reduce the dosage. And gradually try to help them in developing some other interests so that they can divert their mind in all those things, and gradually they reduce the dosage. The same thing is in the Shakti worship. The same thing, that you cannot forcefully just abstain in the very first day, because the mind has this impulse. So gradually, by changing the orientation, and gradually you're abstaining, gradually. And if anyone takes this practice as a license for enjoying the world, there will be degradation. It is your choice. But they have been actually prescribed not for that. If I misuse it, anything can be misused. Of course, that will lead to degradation. But if someone really humbly feels that I feel that the spiritual life is something which is desirable, but at present, my intense desire doesn't allow me that. For them, the scripture is prescribing this path. That gradually, by changing your orientation, by trying to see the divine everywhere, you can come out of your impulses by sublimating them. So this idea of Atmavad Deva Sevanam is the basic principle for all the sublimations which has been spoken of in the Tantra Shastra. So that's why there's the three things he has been spoken of. Now the next thing which Sri Ramakrishna is saying, the worship of Shakti is extremely difficult. It is no joke. Means when he is saying the worship of Shakti, of course, here he is indicating that specific worship of Shakti, that is as a Vira Bhava. It is extremely difficult. It's no joke. And now he's saying that for him, as he was, just you will find that it is not something which you have to practice. If you don't have that type of strong impulse, you can simply get rid of it. You can simply just try to practice the other bhavas. You need not have to practice the Vira Bhava, the hero worship. So in Ramakrishna's words certifies to that. I passed 2 years as a handmaid and companion of the Divine Mother. But my natural attitude has always been that of a child towards his mother. So there's Shakti, there's as a Veera Bhava. He never practiced. It was not required because he never had, there was no question of the strong impulse in him. So what? Just as a handmaid or companion of the Divine Mother, he did spend some time, and the natural attitude has always been like of a child towards the mother. There's a very pure form of relation. Women are, all of them, the veritable images of Shakti. Now that the Veera Bhava, what's the practice? In all the marriage ceremony, the Tantra is pervading the entire civilization. It's not just that if there's a few people who profess to practice Tantra are the one who are practicing Tantra. Knowingly, unknowingly, the entire India, the entire so-called the Hindu culture is practicing Tantra. That you will find out that in the Northwest India, the bride holds a knife in her hand at the time of marriage. In Bengal, a nut cutter. So just see, many of these people of the various cultures, they don't know why they do it. Sri Ramakrishna is indicating the significance of it. So it's again a part of Tantra, that why you will find that the groom is always holding something sharp, either it be nut cutter or it be the knife. So the meaning is that the bridegroom, with the help of the bride, who is the embodiment of the divine power, will sever the bondage of illusion. So just see how the Tantra has entered all the cultures. This is the heroic attitude. This is the Veera Bhava. So everyone is practicing Veera Bhava. If they know the real significance of it, then the entire life becomes a spiritual practice. It's a 24/7 spiritual practice. You need not have to compartmentalize your life by saying that only in the morning for some time when I go and I'm in my shrine, I'm doing my meditation and doing my worship, that's the time I'm spiritual, rest of the time I'm worldly. No, by changing the attitude, the life becomes a 24/7 spiritual practice. So this is the heroic worship. You have just changed the attitude. I never worship the Divine Mother that way. My attitude toward her is that of a child toward its mother. Just see, if you read the gospel within the lines, how nicely the scripture gets revealed. So it speaks that it is not something which everyone has to practice. It's not a license for enjoyment. It's just a way out for those who have very strong impulses. For them also, a path has been prescribed by holding on to which you can still progress in spiritual life. So that's what is being indicated by these words of Ramakrishna. The bride is the very embodiment of Shakti. Haven't you noticed at the marriage ceremony how the groom sits behind like an idiot, but the bride, she is bold. So that's Sri Ramakrishna's funny way of observation, that the bride seems to be quiet, bold, and it is the groom who sits behind like an idiot. After attaining God, one forgets his external splendor, the glories of his creation. One doesn't think of God's glories after one has seen him. The devotee, once immersed in God's bliss, doesn't calculate any more about outer things. So what's Sri Ramakrishna is speaking of? So in those days, in Brahma Samaj, that this Brahma movement was very popular in those days. So in the Brahma Samaj prayers, we find that there has to be a lot of description of the God's splendor. Oh God, you have created the world. So these beautiful mountains, beautiful rivers. It's not something which shouldn't be encouraged. It is good, but it can never really lead to intense spiritual practice. It helps one spiritually by defying the creation. You see the God's hand everywhere. But as long as you are relating to the creation as God's splendor, there cannot be an intimacy with God. If you think the object of your love is something great, he is extremely rich, powerful, you cannot relate to him just the way a friend relates to a friend. You have to get rid of all those. When just to say that the judge, the chief justice, is a powerful man when he is in the courtroom sitting there. But when he comes back to home, his son, his small child, doesn't think him as the chief justice of the court, Supreme Court. He takes him as the father. All those adjectives will create a distance. And the father also knows that when I am home, all those adjectives has to, all those so-called this attributes has to fall off. In love, in real love, those attributes becomes doesn't allow us to be intimate. So that way, if you really want to progress in spiritual life, the God has to be as if all the splendors of God has to be forgotten. You have to think of God as something your own. The more you think of splendor, you cannot relate to him intimately. To have an idea of this word, there's a nice story in the Bhagavatam, very nice story. That once Narada, he always used to think that there is no one greater in devotion than him. So, and he wanted to hear these words from Krishna. So he asked Krishna, so who is your greatest devotee? He was sure as if he will say that it's you. But Krishna just told that it is the gopis of Vrindavan. Now, Narada was not convinced. He told, how come? And then Krishna, to just explain that how the gopis' devotion is a real devotion, suddenly he feigned that he has a headache. And he told us, for my headache, what I need, that anyone who can give the dust of his feet, and I rub that dust of his feet on my head, I can get rid of my headache. Can you give? Immediately Narada says, no, how can I? It's impossible. You're the Lord. How can I just give the dust of my feet? Then Lakshmi, when Narada asks Lakshmi, thinking that she may agree, no one agreed, because everyone had the idea of the splendor of the divinity. But when they went to the gopis, all the gopis, when they heard that Krishna is having a headache, they were extremely concerned. And then Narada told that there is a way out, there is a prescription. What is the prescription? That the dust of the feet of anyone, if he rubs, it will be over. And all the gopis, then they say, take all the dust. Means they were just trampling over the ground. They told, how much dust do you want? You take all this dust and go and rub it on Krishna's head. So just see that this is a very simple story, but what it speaks of, as long as you're thinking of the Lord's splendor, that the question of this transgression comes. Oh, he is such great. I have to maintain some decorum. I cannot just break that. But when all the splendors has fallen off, you can relate to him as a very intimate relation, then all the splendors you are not thinking of, and then your love can really become very, very intense. So as long as we are thinking of the splendor, there cannot be true love. It is not bad, but it cannot help in having supreme devotion, para-bhakti. So that's why after attaining God, one forgets his external splendor. When the real devotion comes, the more the devotion, the more the splendor falls off. The glories of his creation. One doesn't think of God's glories after one has seen him. The devotee, once immersed in God's bliss, doesn't calculate anymore about outer things. So Sri Ramakrishna the master of examples. In some other place gives another example, which will really clarify this idea, what he's saying. That if your intention is to taste the mango, you go to the mango orchard, two friends enters the mango orchard with an intention to eat mangoes. One of them climbs up the tree and starts eating mango. You know that there are many such orchards where it has been told that you cannot take anything away. You go and eat as much as you want. Because sometimes, that for harvesting also, a lot of expense is there. You have to pay them. But all the fruits may get waste. So, okay, it's free. You go and eat as much as you cannot take away. So, such a situation you can think of here, that one of the friend went and immediately started eating mangoes. And the other was an intellectual. Seeing the huge mango orchard, he thought, let me count the number of trees. What a big orchard. How many trees? How many leaves can be there in each of the tree? How many branches? So Ramakrishna is saying that who is the intelligent one? If you have came to eat mangoes, taste the mango. Why to just go on dwelling upon the splendor, that how big the mango orchard is, how many trees are there, how many branches are there in each tree, how many leaves. So don't count leaves, eat the mango. So counting leaves is like being engaged in being totally involved in the splendor of the divine. You are totally overwhelmed by the splendor, but that can never help you to taste the mango, the love, the devotion, the love for the divine, by being in communion with the divine. That is possible when you forget the splendor and try to enjoy the bliss which comes from the real devotion. So that's after attaining God, one forgets his external splendor, the glories of his creation. One doesn't think of God's glories after one has seen him. The devotee, once immersed in God's bliss, doesn't calculate anymore about outer things. When I see Narendra, I don't need to ask him, what's your name? Where do you live? Where is the time for such questions? Once a man asked Hanuman which day of the fortnight it was. Brother, said Hanuman, I don't know anything of the day of the week, or the fortnight, or the position of the stars. I think of Rama alone. So the more we get identified with the self, the more we get immersed in devotion. We go beyond the concept of time, space, causation. It happens even in our day-to-day life, whenever we enter into a state of flow. When you are practicing some instrumental music, at the beginning, your skills doesn't meet the challenge. To really learn, that's the challenge. Your skills are not up to it. And after a lot of practice, as long as you're practicing, you don't get the taste of playing that music. But when your skills have met the challenge, then you enter into a state of flow. You're so absorbed in that, in your own playing of the instrument. You're so absorbed, time passes, flows. You don't know how much time has passed. You forget the need to have food, to have drink, that you're tired, because all the biological alarm system, all this alarm is not processed by the mind, because the entire mind is dwelling in the thing which you really like. So what happens, though you're in the body, you have become videha, as if you are without any body, because all the bodily feelings has fallen off. The concept that time passes, you don't know how much time has passed. So that's the thing which happens when you develop intense devotion. The moment that when you are in communion with the divine, you enter into a state of flow. And that takes you as a beyond time, space, causation. And that's the thing which is needed for our spiritual evolution. The more you can get rid of yourself, the more you evolve spiritually. because it is the sense of this limited individuality that alone is the cause of bondage. As Sri Ramakrishna used to say when he was asked, when shall I be free? When I cease to be. And the I ceases to be when you can enter into a state of flow. And for that, devotion is the only means by which you can enter into a state of uninterrupted flow. And that's being spoken of here, that once a man asked Hanuman which day of the fortnight it was. Brother, said Hanuman, I don't know anything of the day of the week or the fortnight or the position of the stars. I think of Rama alone. When you think of Rama alone, when that contemplation has enabled you to enter into a state of flow, everything else falls off. You go beyond the concept of time, space, causation. October 16, 1882. It was Monday, a few days before the Durga Puja, the festival of the Divine Mother. Sri Ramakrishna was in a very happy state of mind, for Narendra was with him. Narendra had brought 2 or 3 young members of the Brahma Samaj to the temple garden. Besides this, Rakhal, Ramlal, Hajra, and Aim were with the master. Narendra had his midday meal with Sri Ramakrishna. Afterwards, a temporary bed was made on the floor of the master's room so that the disciples might rest a while. A mat was spread over which was placed a quilt covered with a white sheet. A few cushions and pillows completed the simple bed. Like a child, the master sat near Narendranath on the bed. He talked with the devotees in great delight, with a radiant smile lighting his face and his eyes fixed on Narendra. He was giving them various spiritual teachings, interspersing these with the incidents from his own life. Master, after I had experienced Samadhi, my mind craved intensely to hear only about God. I would always search for places where they were reciting or explaining the sacred books such as the Bhagavata, the Mahabharata, and the Adhyatma Ramayana. I used to go to Krishna Kishore to hear him read the Adhyatma Ramayana. So what it speaks? After experiencing Samadhi. So this is the idea which we find even in the Yoga Shastra. That at present, my mind is distracted, in a distracted state. Sarvartha. With a lot of practice, I develop ekagrata. For the first time, when my mind is ekagra, it is there for the short time. For the first short time, it is concentrated. Again, it breaks into thousands of thoughts. Why it happens? That though I am consciously trying to keep my mind in one thought, my subconscious mind is full of all those vagaries. They pop up. The mind, the conscious mind gets disturbed by 2 things. All the conscious thoughts and perceptions, by that it gets disturbed. It's like pelting stone on the surface of a pond. Immediately the water breaks into ripples. All these conscious thoughts are like pelting stones. And again, the surface of the pond gets disturbed by the bubbles which are coming from the bottom. There are a lot of bubbles which are coming from the bed of the pond, from the bottom surface of the pond. These bubbles are coming up. When they reach the surface, they break there, and that also disturbs the water, the surface of the water. So the conscious mind gets disturbed by 2 things. One is all these conscious thoughts, perceptions, and another is the subconscious thoughts, which are like the bubbles. Now my mind is full of all those vagaries. Though I am consciously trying to keep my mind focused, I am taking a resolution. Let me keep the mind in my Ishta. Naturally, it is very obvious that as my subconscious mind is full of all those vagaries, they come up and break my concentration. And what's the way out? Now this conscious attempt is very feeble, very weak compared to the subconscious mind. That's why we find by repeated attempts, we fail again and again. Then is there no way out? There is a way out. That if we know how all those vagaries, thousands of thoughts have entered into the subconscious mind. The only way to go to the subconscious is through the conscious mind. Whatever we think, whatever we do, whatever we perceive is not lost. It immediately goes to the subconscious mind as samskara, and which again comes back as memory. They remain there as latent impressions, and they come back as memory, as the bubbles are like the memories. So all these have entered my subconscious mind through the conscious, maybe in some past birth, in past life, or even in the present life. Till now when I have taken the resolution to concentrate. So they are full. Now, how this feeble attempt can ever succeed? The same way that even if I am failing to concentrate my mind, but each and every attempt to concentrate my mind is a conscious attempt, which also is going to the subconscious mind. This every failure attempt, though I am not succeeding, but for the time being, I'm trying to concentrate my mind, maybe just for a fraction of a second, I'm successful, and again, the distraction comes. But this conscious attempt, that small attempt, that has also gone to the subconscious mind, because anything which I do in the conscious mind goes to the subconscious. Now, slowly, this will start saturating the subconscious mind. This each and every failed attempt, though it is very feeble, it is going and saturating the subconscious and cleaning the subconscious mind from all the vagaries. The example which we gave previously, it's just like a cup. If we just compare our mind with a cup full of turgid water, impure water, full of impurities. It is full to the brim. Now, if you pour pure water into the cup, distilled water into the cup, as it is full to the brim, the turgid water which was already there, that starts spilling off. It starts spilling off, and the pure water goes on diluting the turgidity. So turgidity is reducing gradually. A time will come when all the turgid contents has been washed away and the cup is just full of pure water. So it's a matter of time, but the change is happening. And the time comes when the mind is full of pure water. That speaks of your mind is having ekagra vritti, that only one thought. All the vagaries has gone off. Now, when the mind is in one thought, it cannot stay long in one thought, because this world is the world of polarity. Wherever there is a flow, there should be polarity. This world in Sanskrit is called samsara. Samsarate iti samsara. Wherever there is a flow, everything is flowing. Why everything is flowing? Because there is polarity. Why water flows? Because there is a difference of level. If both the levels become same, water won't flow. Why the electricity flows? Because there is a difference in potential. If the both ends have same potential, there is no electricity. Magnetism the same. If two north poles are there, they will negate each other. We're not going to get if any iron filing is kept between, it won't be attracted by any of them, because one field is negating the other of same strength. So wherever there is a polarity, there is a flow. Why the mind exists? Because it can jump from thought to thought. Mind means jumping from thought to thought. If you somehow manage not to jump from thought to thought, keep the mind in ekagra vritti for long, it doesn't happen immediately. At the beginning, though my mind may be ekagra, but there is a frequency where one thought is coming, and after the next thought is coming, there is a little lapse. The more we practice, this lapse reduces. That's why after dhyana comes dharana, then only samadhi. Dharana speaks of, like, just to give an example, when you have a picture which has very low resolution, you can see the dots. It doesn't give a sense of a continuous picture. But if the dots are very intense, that they call it high resolution, means that you have high DPI, dots per inch. When the dots per inch are immense, then you don't see the dots. It looks like a very continuous picture. Similarly, When the mind has for the first time become ekagra, it's like a low resolution mind, a low resolution picture. The dots are still visible. The more I become adept in meditation, there's DPI, just like the DPI increases, the resolution increases, it gives a sense of continuity. So then that becomes dharana. When that dharana, then what happens? The polarity has been resolved. Same thought. When previously I was thinking ABCD, now it is A without any gap. Now the mind cannot continue, because as we told, as long as we can jump from thought to thought, then it is the mind. With intense concentration, the mind falls off as if for the time being. There is no thought. That takes you beyond the mind to get established in the self. But now another thing happens. My subconscious mind is now filled with that, there's Ishtavritti, the thinking of the Lord, that which made my mind ekagra, concentrated. That is full. So now this ekagra vritti comes and breaks that thoughtless state, nirodha state. So what happens? Now again, you come down from the samadhi, and now you find again that devotion is welling up. You like to stay with the devotion when you're coming down. So now, when we feel that sometimes we may feel that Ramakrishna throughout the day is just praying to God, taking Lord's name. We see so many people doing it. Then what's the difference between Ramakrishna and the so many people who are the novices in the devotional life? The difference is it cannot be found from just by this objectively. It's a very, very, what is a subjective experience. For the so-called, the majority, the mind is constantly getting distracted. They're somehow trying to concentrate the mind by taking the name of the Lord. And for Ramakrishna, it is again and again going to the samadhi. From there, it is when coming down, the natural state. He cannot go to the restless state because the mind has already been cleansed. It naturally comes to the state where he likes to hear of the divine. So though both are chanting the name of the Lord, but one is coming down to chant the name of the Lord, and other has to go up to chant the name of the Lord. So there is a difference, though it may look alike. As Swami Vivekananda used to say, that the extreme poles always look alike. We cannot see the ultraviolet light, we cannot see the infrared light. But there's a huge difference. Similarly, Ramakrishna coming down from samadhi, taking the name of Lord, is something totally different from us sitting and chanting the name of the Lord. When we are chanting, we ourselves we know that so many places our mind is going again and again. If you can keep your mind in one of the devotional song without any distraction, forget about japa. In japa, when you are repeating the name of the Lord, it is only one name you are trying to repeat. It's quite difficult. In a song, there is some flow of ideas. That is easy to keep the mind in the song. But if you have succeeded in keeping your mind in the song without the mind getting distracted in anything else, know it for certain, it's a great achievement. You can ask anyone to do that. And you have to be sincere, of course. If you just say, no, I have done it, that's a different thing. If just see it subjectively, try one day. That, okay, today when when Khandana song is going on, I will keep my mind only in Khandana, nothing else. If you can do it, know it for certain, you have really succeeded a great deal. You'll find the mind is so what if this fluid, when it has just gone to some other thought, you even don't know. But for Ramakrishna, it's not the case. He goes to the samadhi, but the natural state of the mind is that ishtavritti. When it comes down, it wants to stay there. And that's what he's saying about his experience here. After I had experienced samadhi, my mind craved intensely to hear only about God. I would always search for places where they were reciting or explaining the sacred books, such as the Bhagavata, the Mahabharata, the Adhyatma Ramayana. I used to go to Krishna Kishore to hear him read the Adhyatma Ramayana. So we'll continue with Sri Ramakrishna's own experiences as he has narrated in his own words again in the next class. So with this, we stop our discussion today. Thank you all. Namaskars.